In Lebanon today, there was a statement being made by, a speech by the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qasim, saying the resistance won in Lebanon and Gaza, and the Israeli project was defeated. He mentioned many things, of course, in relation to the actual developments in the region and in Gaza, how well the resistance performed against Israel, the fact that they indeed had a lot of losses when it comes to Lebanon, but they went out with their heads up high. One important thing that he mentioned, though, which made people speculate, is the fact that he said, we reject having any extension for Israeli presence on Lebanese soil. Israel needs to withdraw now. And he made other statements too, following which he said, anyone can understand it the way they want. Everyone can translate this or interpret it the way they want to. If you want to interpret it as a declaration of war, fine. If you want to interpret it in a different way, that's also fine. But what's for sure is that unlike the initial phase of the ceasefire in Lebanon, now with this 60-day period being over, we're talking about differences, slight differences here. Okay, why slight differences? Because the main person who was in charge of the negotiations between the American side and Hezbollah is Nabih Berri. Nabih Berri, the leader of Amal. He also made statements today that hint that there's a disagreement between him and the Lebanese prime minister, caretaker prime minister. Okay. He said, I stipulated an immediate ceasefire because in Lebanon, there were some reports that, okay, the Lebanese state, we agreed on giving Israel a bit more time. The American mediators, they previously told the Lebanese, give Israel up until the 28th of February to leave. Lebanese side said no. Then they said, give the Israelis up until the 18th of Feb to leave. Lebanon said no. Then there were also suggestions coming from the American side, let Israel control hills, certain hills in the area for a temporary period. Lebanon said no. Now, there's a disagreement, clearly. And the report said that when it comes to Nabih Berri, who was the parliament speaker, he commented on the statement made by Najib Mikati about giving the deadline up until the 18th of December, saying that he consulted with us about giving a deadline till 18th February in exchange for pressure to stop Israeli violations and attacks. The truth is that I stipulated an immediate cessation of ceasefire, violations, destruction of homes, in addition to commitment of the issue of prisoners. Meaning that, Mikati did not outright say, oh yeah, fine, you can go ahead and stay up until the 18th of February. However, also from the report, it's clear that there was no direct indication coming from him that it's an absolute no. The absolute no came from Hezbollah. Hezbollah said that we refuse any presence of Israel in this region from this day on. We gave them 60 days. 60 days have passed. So now you need to withdraw. And we are at liberty to do what is suitable for us. We are at liberty to do what is suitable for us. Does that mean that they want to escalate on an all-out war with Israel again? Not necessarily. Why? Because based on all of the Israeli breaches of the ceasefire in Lebanon, recorded over 1,350, Hezbollah responded once. And to that one response, there was no real, result coming from that. Israel continued its breaches. Now, will Hezbollah do something else? Maybe, but not very likely. Why? Because now they are trying to give the responsibility to the state. The state was telling them, and some people were saying in Lebanon, give an opportunity for diplomacy, give an opportunity for politics. And one argument that the Hezbollah Secretary General gave today is that when we gave you time to deal with it with politics, you saw Israel breaching every day. When we were fighting, they weren't doing anything. Basically, we're hitting them really hard, although they had several divisions, but 3 divisions on the borders with Lebanon, 75,000 genocide soldiers. They hardly got in. But with the ceasefire, okay, they started withdrawing from certain places and limited invasions too, tactical. And the resistance tactically allowed them to do that too. Now they're there. And the politics, well, I'm negotiating with them, and now they're saying they want an extension. Really and truly, they're trying to delay their stay here because they want certain areas. Why? The main reason why is Israel cannot convince its population of the northern occupied Palestine territories to return. Why? Because they did not see a decisive action being taken against Hezbollah. They saw senior figures being assassinated from Hezbollah. They saw many of their members being targeted with the pager attack. They saw destruction in the south, but they did not see their state stopping the barrages of missiles coming on Israel up until the very last day before the same ceasefire took place. So they're not convinced. As a matter of fact, many of those leading figures in the municipalities of the north are saying, Hezbollah still have tunnels to our areas. And one senior figure in an area in the north, I think it's called Misgaf Am, he said that, well, we don't even have the IDF here. I went back to this area, and the majority of the people are not going back in Israel to the north. And he said, I did not see any presence of the Israeli army here. What are we left to die? If Hezbollah want to do something tomorrow, they can. Who's going to stop them? So Israel is in a very, very, very tough situation, both in Lebanon and in Gaza too. In Gaza, 15 months, genocide, destruction, infanticide, every depraved act that Satan can't even dream of, they've committed in Gaza. And now they're withdrawing from the main area. Israel sold the Netzarim line as the biggest accomplishment in Gaza. Netzarim access or Netzarim corridor was considered to be Israel's biggest accomplishment. And now they're withdrawing. And they're withdrawing from the Philadelphia corridor. 2 places that, again, Netanyahu said he's not going to be withdrawing from. Netanyahu said, we want to eliminate the Hamas, make sure Gaza doesn't pose a threat again, and return our prisoners back, as he calls them, the hostages. Hasn't achieved any of them. He's achieving the return of the prisoners by negotiations with Hamas and with the Palestinian resistance. Elimination of Hamas. He stopped talking about it for several months now. But now if they mention the idea, they're like, yeah, we need to make sure that they're not present there as a military structure. All sorts of, washing words around and coming up with these new terms. And the images of today, they put Israel in a very big problem in front of its population. Likewise with Lebanon. With Lebanon, people are saying, well, we've done all of that. And okay, now we're withdrawing. Well, what happened then? Why did we even go on this war? Why? Any person with a sound mind in Israel and across the world would say, if you had objectives of the war, and they had objectives of the war, that you could have achieved without war, then why did you not negotiate from the beginning and make us suffer such tremendous losses? Reveal our true color to the whole world. Reveal our true nature as a fake state. Everyone knows we're fake now. Everyone knows we're the terrorists. Everyone knows everything about us now. Why'd you have to do that? Couldn't you have reached a deal with Hamas from the beginning? They told you we're willing to make a deal. We made Al-Aqsa flood just because we weren't talking about it, providing solutions. Thinking you can overstep the Palestinian cause and let people die in prisons and continuously kill people in the West Bank as you wish without us responding? No. But they didn't. They chose the violent path. And guess what? All after this violent path and destruction, they submit, they surrender, they get defeated. And it's proving very troublesome. Now, there are multiple options to move forward. What are the options? The first option is there's a notion that Netanyahu signed this ceasefire knowing that it can reach, that's it, an ultimate full-blown ceasefire. That is very likely because the conditions that the agreement is tied to, the way that it's written, the way that it's worded, the way that the phases are connected, they indicate towards an ending of the war. They indicate towards what? All of the principles of Hamas. What are the principles of Hamas? Ending the war completely, Israel withdrawing from all of Gaza, everyone returning to everywhere they want inside of Gaza, getting all of the aid in, so lifting the siege basically, and rebuilding Gaza. Oh, everything is headed towards that direction. Everything is headed towards that direction. So why did we have to do that? This is people saying. And Netanyahu, he went into these negotiations knowing these facts. Can he make a U-turn on the ceasefire? Technically, he can. Of course he can. How likely is he to do that? Not very likely. Why? Benjamin Netanyahu, by entering this agreement, he knew the results, like we just stated, and he also already breached many of the things he promised the Israeli public, but above the Israeli public, the Israeli people sending their children to die for him in this war. He was telling them, we're there up until we defeat the Hamas. That's why some of them continued to go, although he was facing so many problems. We're there to stay. The settler establishment or the squatting thief establishment, you know, the criminals and pedophiles and thugs from around the world who are stealing Palestinian land in the West Bank and expelling people, they were also sending people to die for that cause, remaining in Gaza, reoccupying in Gaza, resettling in Gaza, expelling the population. Now that they're seeing that Benjamin Netanyahu is doing the opposite, what are they thinking? I will never fight another war for you. I will never go be deployed again in Gaza. You've lied to me. You betrayed me. I can't. So he will, if he had problems getting people to the army and going to fight, he's going to have 10 times more problems with the people who served. And he already has problems with the people who served, but people need to understand. Over 60% refuse orders, don't comply. Over 60% of the reservists in Israel don't comply with reserve orders. But you need to understand that very well. Going to try and escalate again after doing this? After hundreds of thousands are going back to the north that you wanted to clear out of people and destroyed completely, and it's gobsmacked by people going back? How am I going to do that? How am I going to believe you? He's going to find it very difficult. Who's trying to sell the notion that, oh no, that actually might happen? Smotrich, Ukrainian Smotrich. Smotrich is the place in Ukraine. Stupid old Bezalel Smotrich forgot to change his name, unlike Benjamin Milakovsky, the Polish one. He was saying, oh no, I'm going to have a meeting with Netanyahu and I'm going to tell him we need to go back full on in this war and we need to control all of Gaza and we need to settle there and we need to eliminate Hamas and we need to appoint an aggressive chief of staff. We need to appoint an aggressive chief of staff. All lies. Why? They're trying to blame the army for the failure. And he, Smotrich, is trying to please some of his backers, some of his base. Although even his base, by the way, there's a split between them. Some people are saying, okay, let's just finish it already. While others are saying, oh no, let's actually continue. So it's not like there's consensus, by the way, from within his party, religious Zionism. What he's saying is he's trying to shift the blame to the military leader. It's as if the IDF chief of staff, the previous one who resigned, like the dozens who resigned from the IDF, and some who resigned from the government, the previous cabinet too, again, indicating how much of a failed state it is. He's trying to blame everything on him. Oh, he wasn't aggressive enough. He was challenging the prime minister, and he was doing this and he was doing that. At the end of the day, in Israel, the IDF chief of staff is bound by the defense minister, who's appointed by the prime minister. So the prime minister decides, the other organizations, they implement. But now he's trying to give this excuse to his base to remain in the government. But he also gave himself a deadline. He said, when the first phase of ceasefire ends, if we don't go back to the war with full force, I'm going to resign. Does that mean Netanyahu is going to go back to a full-scale war? Again, that's a possibility, but not to a full-scale war. The possibility of a full-scale war has become less and less likely the more the days go by with a temporary ceasefire. And especially with an administration, no matter how Donald Trump wants to bark with his racist speech against the Palestinian people, no matter how much he wants to bark, at the end of the day, the more the time goes by, it's very unlikely to go back to full-blown war. And also Trump said if they're not going to go to phase 2, there's going to be lots of problems. Now Netanyahu already understands what problems means when Trump speaks, because now he understood 2 weeks ago what hell means when Trump speaks. Mm-hmm. That's very important people to know. And also another thing here with regards to Donald Trump's statement, not taking away from how abhorrent it is and how despicable and vile it was. Some people are saying that this was a move that was coordinated between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump so that Benjamin Netanyahu can lift the pressure internally, and especially when it comes to Smotrich, and he can please his ally by telling him, look, tomorrow we're going to withdraw from Netzarim and you're going to see people going back in masses to the north, but listen to what Trump has to say. And Trump is saying, we need to come up with a plan. You know, it's all destroyed. So, not very likely, but again, everything is open. Why? Because there is still Israel. No one is talking about dismantling Israel. No one is talking about a regime change in Israel. No one is talking about uprooting the most violent terrorist ideology in the West Asian region, Zionism. No one is talking about that. And so long as you're not talking about any of that, you can expect more problems. And by the way things are going with Israel's allies, some change certain tones here and there. The most significant ones haven't that much. The United States, senior members of the NATO, which means there would still be a prospect of an escalation at some point. However, judging by how things are going, the more time goes by, the more unlikely it is. Netanyahu could at one point, after the initial phase of the ceasefire, phase 1 of the ceasefire ends, although they're connected, by the way, and because this is based on the Joe Biden initiative, Joe Biden clearly in his speech said, if both sides don't reach an agreement in phase 1, on phases 2 and 3, the ceasefire will continue. That's by the definition of Joe Biden. And although the wording hasn't been published of all of the ceasefire agreement, that's most likely a part of it, by the way. And that's why Trump was saying about phase 2. Netanyahu could potentially try and do something like, I don't know, an attack or a slight breach or something, or a violation, right? But again, all options are open.